Hello Whovians, welcome back to the Kingdom of the Geeks. Today let's talk about Doctor Who Season 8 Episode 4 called Listen. By the way, how do you guys like my shirt? I got it from a friend and I love it! So, this episode was by far one of the scariest episodes in Doctor Who history. The tone of the episode was fantastic, and I really like that they didn't reveal the scary monster that was supposed to be hiding underneath the bedsheet. So in the beginning, it seems like the Doctor has totally lost his mind, and he's walking around the TARDIS talking to himself and thinking out loud. I like that he was traveling around. At some point he ends up under the water, and the first thought that came into my head, I was like, oh, can we finally go visit the lost city of Atlantis? Because apparently the TARDIS can go under the water. That's really cool. Following the Doctor's batshit crazy moment, we get the most awkward date of all time between Clara and Danny Pink. I actually was cringing during some moments because it felt so awkward, and I felt really bad for both of them. I really like the Doctor's turning into like Clara's crazy uncle slash best friend who's totally annoyed with her love life and doesn't know what advice to give her and has no idea how to react to her when she's upset, and pretty much his only idea of trying to make her feel better is like, okay, come on, let's get in the TARDIS, I'm taking you on an adventure. The one thing that I must say about this episode, it was very predictable, and I don't know if that's because I'm just so used to Stephen Moffat's writing at this point that I can kind of predict exactly what's going to happen in the next scene and in the next scene, but I found myself predicting exactly what was going to happen from one scene to the next. And overall, I thought that it was a pretty well written episode, so Moffat, you didn't fail me this time. Seriously though, Clara can really put her foot in her mouth, can't she? The scene with the Doctor patching her into the telepathic circuit and using her to fly to her past childhood, which didn't end up that way, they ended up in Danny's. I thought that was really cool because we've never really seen that before. Of course, it was pretty obvious that Clara was going to get distracted because she's thinking about Danny so much and how much she effed up her date. And I basically knew that we were going to end up in Danny Pink's past instead of hers. By the way, Samuel Anderson is a great actor and I love his portrayal of Danny Pink as an adult. But this young boy, played by Remy Gooding, oh my god, he was amazing. I really love that kid. I can't believe that was his first acting role. Can you believe that? That is amazing. He did such a good job. It was very natural. He played off of the Doctor and Clara so well. So congratulations, Remy Gooding. You're awesome. You're going places. I love everything about the orphanage scenes. Everything from the exchange between young Rupert Pink and Clara. I love the return of the psychic paper because we haven't seen the psychic paper in a while. I especially love when the Doctor was trolling the caretaker of the orphanage when he stole his coffee and scared him half to death. I think this particular Doctor is just a giant troll. I think he just wants to mess with people for his own amusement just to see what happens, and it's really funny. The Doctor's dad skills came in there for a second and I pretty much died. That was absolutely hilarious that he just like knocked out the little boy and he was just like, dad skills, got him. The scene with Clara and young Rupert Pink where they're hiding under the bed and then we see pressure from above the bed and it's terrifying, that actually kind of freaked me out a little bit because we don't actually get to see the monster. They have their backs turned against it the whole time and the Doctor's telling them to close their eyes and to ignore it and that it will eventually go away, and we kind of get a tiny little glimpse of what it might look like. Here you go. To me, it looks like a little baby Centauran or like a misshapen human. I don't even know what the hell that could be, but despite what happens later on in the episode, I do think that particular monster was completely real. I loved all the timey-wiminess of this episode, that Clara gets to see herself exit the restaurant when she comes back to make it right with Danny and fails at it again. I love that we get to see that orange spacesuit again, and for a second we thought that it was a Doctor, but I totally knew that it was Danny because over the past few days they have released a few stills from the episode, so I knew that was going to be Danny Pink or somebody who looks exactly like Danny Pink. It ended up being Orson Pink, who is probably Clara's descendant from the future. So I guess I was right. Danny Pink and Clara are gonna get together and make a few babies and procreate. Awesome! Go Clara! Get your hot dude! Go Clara! Go Clara! I like that the doctor specifically mentioned that he turned the safeguards off to go through Clara's memories and travel around the TARDIS. I think that he turned the safeguards off specifically because he's going to be traveling and looking for Gallifrey. And he turned the safeguards off so that the TARDIS will land in places that it normally wouldn't. So basically the TARDIS could end up anywhere at this point. We're looking for a pocket universe. It could be anywhere in space and time. So he turned off the safeguards so that the TARDIS might by accident stumble upon Gallifrey. So now we get to the main portion of the story where the most terrifying thing of all time occurs. So if you remember the episode called Midnight from season 4 with David Tennant and Donna, we have a very, very similar situation here. I was totally flashing back to that episode. You know, we know that something is out there. They have this creepy feeling that there is something out there. Something is churning the door, but we never get to find out what it actually is. We just know that there's some kind of entity out on this dead planet. There could be nothing that exists on the surface of this planet, but there actually is. I think it's just as terrifying as it was in the episode Midnight, and I think it might probably be the same exact entity. Maybe it's something that just evolves over time. Maybe it's just a remnant of humanity that just stays and evolves into something else. It's actually really terrifying if you really think about it deeply enough. The Doctor had so many hilarious lines in this episode and far too many funny facial expressions. I really liked that he couldn't figure out why Clara was so freaked out when Orson Pink ended up on the TARDIS, and he was just like, "What is wrong with your eyes? Get them under control, they're up to here!" Oh my god, that was so funny. And one of the other best moments of this episode was when the lighting changed as Clara and the Doctor were waiting in Orson's spaceship, and she's like, "Do you come with your own mood lighting? The accent's enough." And he just gave her the most sarcastic look, like, it was so funny. I also find it really funny that the Doctor keeps insulting Clara's looks. I don't know why exactly he's doing that, but it seems to be like a recurring thing with him. He's constantly talking about how she doesn't look young, or she's not wearing any makeup, and she should probably stop dating because it's already way too late for her. And in this episode he keeps talking about how wide her face is, that's why she needs the 3 mirrors. This is so funny, and I don't know why exactly they're writing it that way. I don't know if it's a way to completely erase Clara's crush on the Doctor, but it's definitely very humorous. Centaurans reversing the course of human history! What the heck was that about? When Clara finally figured out that something is really, really wrong and there is some kind of crazy ass entity outside, then she needs to save the Doctor and Orson, and she patches herself into the telepathic interface again, I knew that something different was going to happen. I knew that we wouldn't go back to Clara's past, because we've seen enough of it. I feel like it would be a little too redundant if we were to go back to her childhood. And I know that we wouldn't go back to Danny Pink's past because, well, we've already done that. So the only other option was the Doctor's. So when they landed in that barn, my heart literally stopped for a second, and I was like, I was right. I was right. Wasn't it? I was right. And of course, then we get a confirmation that yes, this is the child Doctor. We don't actually know his name, of course, but he's lying there crying hysterically in bed. Of course, they don't really say why he's crying, but there's a speculation that since the boy looked like he was maybe Danny Pink's age, I would say, so he would be maybe 8 years old. We know that at the age of 8, children on Gallifrey are taken for an initiation ceremony to enroll in the academy to become future Time Lords. So the current popular theory, with which I completely agree, is that the Doctor was crying because he was just taken for his initiation ceremony and he was forced to stare into the untempered schism, saw the time vortex, and we all know what happened after that. And the Master was the one that went mad and just lost his mind. The Doctor was the one that ran away, and he hasn't stopped running ever since. That may be definitely one of the causes for why the young Doctor was bawling his eyes out. Now we come to the part where everybody's minds went because the nightmare that the Doctor kept talking about the entire episode, the nightmare that all of us are supposed to share. By the way, I've never had that dream, so I'm good. This shared nightmare apparently is just something that came from his childhood because Clara was hiding under his bed in the barn, and she grabbed his ankle just out of sheer reflex, and he probably ended up having nightmares about it after that. I find this particularly interesting because he mentions that human beings all over the world also share this dream. if the Doctor, who is a Time Lord and supposed to have existed way in the past because the Time Lords apparently came before humanity, if he had this dream as a child and humanity now shares this dream, wouldn't this possibly mean that human beings on Earth share the Doctor's DNA? Specifically the Doctor's, if you think about it, because I don't think he ever actually says that Time Lords are related to the humans directly. I think that maybe there's a possibility the human beings are descendants from the Doctor, specifically his DNA and his line, because that would also explain why he favors Earth so much and why he constantly keeps traveling to Earth instead of all these other places that he could go. And maybe it will be revealed at the end of the season. I don't know, but I'm really curious about this. I feel like a lot of people are also very irritated that Claire keeps hiding a lot of information from the Doctor, but I think she's doing it for a very good reason. She ended up in his past at a very vulnerable point in his childhood. I think because of what happened, the Doctor develops into the man that he is. He got scared, he was terrified for a few minutes, and he was confronted by this completely unexplained situation. This person that came absolutely out of nowhere, grabbed his ankle, scared him half to death, and then comforted him and told him that being afraid is perfectly okay. So I think that he, as a man, holds on to that fear and he uses it to propel himself forward, to keep himself going. If she were to tell the Doctor that she was the cause of that, I think it would fundamentally change his personality and maybe even change his motivations as a person. Also, not to mention that he heard the TARDIS sound when they were leaving. So that that wheezing sound that we hear the TARDIS make, it's like embedded in his mind since he was a little boy. So now we understand why he prefers to leave the brakes on in the TARDIS, because that sound is just constantly living inside him. It's like a sign of hope, it's a sign of something good. It's something that possibly brought him out of a depression when he was a little boy. I really love the sentiment that fear can make you kind. We're all afraid all the time. Fear can make you a kind person. It can make you be a little bit softer and more understanding instead of more violent and aggressive. As someone who's a huge fan of horror movies, I grew up in the 80s, so I'm a big fan of movies like It, People Under the Stairs, The Shining, Hellraiser, the Nightmare on Elm Street series, the Friday the 13th series, all that stuff. I'm talking about the kinds of movies that like mess you up psychologically and make you terrified for years to come. I saw It when I was a little girl and I'm still afraid of clowns. Like, I'm not like terrified, so I'm not gonna like run away when I see a clown, but I used to. My best friend and I used to flee when we would see a clown. We would hold hands and just run in the opposite direction. I'm okay now. I've gotten over it. Ever since I was about 8 or 9 years old and I watched the movie It, clowns have scared me half to death. So there's something to be said about these psychological child fears that get embedded into our brains and they become a part of us, and sometimes they drive us or they make us more creative, they make us strive for something. So to tell the Doctor that she was the cause of that particular fear, that there was nothing to be afraid of, it would have changed who he is. And I think that she did the right thing. She made the right move not to tell him. And I loved the ending where she goes to Danny's house and knocks on the door and acts on her fear in a positive way. She just leans in and kisses him. And I was like, yay, go Claire and Danny. For those of you who also really love horror movies, by the way, one fantastic horror movie that I can recommend is a French film. It was released a few years ago. It's not recent, but it's a French film called Inside. And it stars this fantastic actress, Alison Paradis. She's amazing. It's not only psychologically disturbing and gory and violent, but it's about a subject matter that will make most women go, yeah. Movie's about this pregnant woman who has lost the love of her life in a tragic car accident, and she is pregnant and living all by herself and trying to get to the idea of becoming a first-time single mother. And she starts to get stalked by this really creepy, mysterious woman who wants to cut out her baby out of her stomach and keep it for herself. It's a messed up movie, but it's so well done. And if you're a true horror movie fan, go ahead and watch it. So I guess we've come to the conclusion of discussing this particular episode. If there's anything you want to talk about, please leave it in the comments below. And I will see you next time when we discuss episode 5, The Time Heist. Can't wait! Bye! Say goodbye, Daleks!
Exterminate!